So, how do you get into an American university for a PhD program as an international student? So, if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massock. I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward to help you out as much as I possibly can. So it's actually quite easy to sort of know what the criteria is as an international student to get into a PhD program. Getting into a PhD program is a different story. So this was a question that was asked from Ishika Gosh, and they were specifically wondering about how to get into a PhD in finance in an American university, but this is general across all programs, and you're going to be looking for, three big criteria. I think this is going to be the really big criteria as international students because there is a group of sort of indicators that it is harder to go by, right? We have this thing called the liability of foreignness. That is a real thing. It's studied in business. It is well studied. And basically, it's all of the costs that are associated with being foreign, whatever that foreignness looks like. And this kind of applies in this circumstance, right? So people that are in American universities that can't assess the quality, the credibility of people from different countries, and the reason is they just don't understand those particular systems. I know, for example, the Indian system is really intense and really hard to get into some of the universities there. But does everybody understand that? No. So, understanding these kind of things, it is going to be sort of very specific to the different institutions. Now, there's also some feelings of uncertainty of, is this person legitimate and all those kind of things, right? Because there are people that try to cheat the system even from American systems, right? So even American institutions have to protect against that, right? So people sort of looking at that, they're sort of like, is this person the real deal? All of those kind of things. But not to mention it, you also face a lot of other barriers as an international student. Sometimes there's language barriers, for example, and those are really big, right? The international language of science is English, unfortunately, right? There is some stuff that's written in different languages, but most of it in modern science is written in English. So there are these barriers that you're going to face. All right, by the way, Ishka, if you don't know, the rules of this channel is if I answer one of your questions, you have to go and do something nice and then leave some comments. So it could be something random, some sort of nice thing for somebody else. Right, so go and cut somebody's grass, go call your mother, all of those kind of things. Just leave a little note and let us know what actually happened. So, all right, so what are we looking for? What are these indicators that you would look for as somebody from, and by the way, I'm Canadian. I'm a foreigner in America. I'm a permanent resident. I'm not an American citizen, and I don't think I'm ever, maybe not going to ever become an American citizen. I don't know. So remember that, right? So I had to face all of these exact same things, even though I speak the same language, but people from America are not going to understand the Canadian system and what it, all of this sort of ins and outs. There's differences. There's some real big differences. They're not even going to know what the best institutions are. You wouldn't believe how many times that people say McGill. They recognize McGill University. It's a great institution, but it's often not ranked at the top at institutions, but it's internationally recognized. If you're in Canada, you'd be like, well, it's okay, it's good. It's a good institution, but you wouldn't say like, okay, it's the absolute very top ranking university. So you have to sort of understand these sort of nuances, right? And there's definitely these nuances that happen. What I want you to sort of think about is, first of all, think about how people get assessed from international places, right? And the way that they're going to be assessed. The only sort of real sort of indicator of people sort of understanding what grades are and what your capabilities are or standardized tests are going to be your biggest thing, right? Those are really big. So your GMAT, if you're in business, GRE, and in other areas, these standardized tests, that is just about the only way that people can assess institutions from other places. That's a Z, by the way. So that's the only way that people can sort of assess what's going on, because grades are, we can't assess what grades are and all those kind of things from different places. So those are going to be really, really, there's going to be a big influence that's put on those, a big emphasis put on those. So you need to have crazy high scores to even be considered from an international, as an international student. Unfortunately, that's really what it is. And especially if you're trying to get into really good schools, the scores have to be higher, just because you have this liability of foreignness. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that that's what it is, right? So you're going to have a higher score. The other thing is you're going to have to show that you actually understand what research is. And so Ishka, you wrote about business, whether you had business experience. That indicates to me you don't understand what a PhD in business actually entails, what a PhD actually entails. There's very little sort of work experience that you need. What you need to do is be good at and competent at building knowledge and understand the research game. So this means actually reading and writing a paper based on somebody's research at one of these schools. Like actually going through and writing, maybe it's a 5-page, 10-page document of that you understand what they're talking about, and you actually read what they wrote, and you understand why you're applying to the institution because those particular people are actually there, right? It's not a one-liner. You actually sat down and synthesized and understand what they are talking about at those institutions. So it's a professor, and you might spend an entire half page or a page per professor thinking about and discussing where you're going to take their research and really understanding what they were about, right? Like synthesizing, understanding what they're about. And that's going to show how you write. And that's going to sort of show to the what you understand what research is about. And that's the third thing, is really showing that you have done research and understand that you've done research. So if you have published in, if you've gone to some of the international conferences that everybody recognizes, so that would be good enough for many places, right? Like you understand that you're in the game. So for management, you went to Academy of Management, right? In finance, maybe you went to the American Economic Association. You've gone to a couple of their, conferences, and you've gave presentations at those conferences. I know that these are, they seem like high barriers, and they are, but that's because that's what everybody else is doing to get into those particular programs. American students, they might have actually gone to those particular things, or they're well on their way to publishing with a faculty member at an institution. I know that's unfair, but that's the reality of actually what it's like, right? That's what you're against. And you have to think about, how are you going to position yourself relative to what other people are doing and look as good and better. You have to look better as an international student often. Unfortunately, it's not right or wrong. It's just the way it actually is, how it's sort of set up. I know that it is, it seems unfair, but that's honestly, there is a where we want to go to, right? What is the ideal? The ideal is none of these barriers should be there, but there is also the normative sense. This is what actually exists, and that's where you stand, right? So it's like every other sort of systematic barrier that we have in society. That's where it stands, right? And you have to recognize that. And it doesn't mean that people are not trying to change that, but it means this is the reality of what it is. So you have to be really good on those standardized tests. You have to you have to like actually understand research and read somebody's work, like actually read and synthesize and understand it, and you can write about it. And then you have to show that you actually have research experience at legitimate places. And that you understand the whole legitimate, how that works. Look at American university CVs or resumes. look to see at where they're going to and try to actually start publishing in those particular places. I know it is a high hurdle, but that's really what it is. If you want to play an American game, you got to play it at the American game, right? And that's really, ultimately, that's what it is. So if you want to go to another country, you want to go to Finland, look to see at what those places, those scholars are publishing in Finland, right? And understand where they're going to. So that's it. Hopefully you like this video. Ishika, remember the rules of the game is you have to do something nice randomly to somebody else and leave notes of what you actually did in the video. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.